started here. Here's kind of our general outline for the evening of what we'll talk about, and let's get the show on the road. So, Red Oak Farm, we got about 12 acres of certified organic produce down outside of Mason, and in addition to the produce, we also raise a small flock of grass-fed sheep. A lot of people ask, why farming? And my mom was one of those people who grew up on a farm, and I think a lot of it is because of, well, her words were, Chris, you're smart. You could do something else better. And I thought, man, you know, that's really interesting way to put it. But as a kid, I grew up going to her parents' farm in West Virginia. It's a big, diversified row crop livestock farm in the hills of West Virginia, and that's my grandpa and grandma there. And it was one of those places where as a kid you go, and instead of everybody fussing over, you gotta stay clean, don't get dirt on your jeans, stay out of the creek, it was, all right, take off, come back at supper. So I thought, boy, this is all right. So I think that sort of planted the seeds for me getting into farming. And I asked I sort of asked myself what I wanted to do with my life as I grew up, and I thought, man, farming was one of those things I really wanted to do. But all the farmers I knew were retired, so I thought that's just what you did when you retired. And so then I did an internship when I was at Northland, at Tom McLeod's Northland Organic Farm up in Bayfield. That's really when the light bulb turned on in my head. The seeds kind of that were planted as a kid germinated that, boy, if we're going to really feed each other regionally and locally and get more farms on the landscape, we got to do it before we're retired. So thank you, Tom, for getting me on that track. So Grey Oak Farm, it's a family perspective, really, and I say that I'm the only person in the family who works on the farm. It's different than a lot of farms where the whole family's involved, but my wife works off farm, and our kids aren't put to work unless they want to, and they have a chance to earn some cash if there's something they're after. And so I think with any small business, farms included, anybody who has a small business knows that business will eat every ounce of your life if you let it, and especially if you live there, like a farm. And so, at the end of the day, you need to be able to say, okay, the work's never going to end, but my kids are growing up, so at some point we got to do some fun stuff. And so anyway, we sort of have that family perspective, and so sometimes if you're driving by or you come by the farm, you'll see plenty of things that aren't done, but just know that I'm trying not to make sure my kids aren't the thing that doesn't get done. Like I said, a full-time job for me, and then we got a couple folks that work on the crew. We got one person kind of full-time during the growing season, May through November, and then another person comes in, or additional people in the fall when we're pulling out harvest in the fall. We got 2 old field tractors and 2 old cultivating tractors, and they're all older than me, and even the newest one. But if you think those tractors are old, we used to run with these tractors, and they were great. They could get the job done, but they're a whole lot slower. I do miss them. You can't outthink a busted carburetor on a tractor, but if a horse is giving you problems, you can put your mind to it, get them to do the right thing in short order. But anyway, we've sort of grown to the point where we've got too much ground to cover at walking speed. And so I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of what the season looks like on Great Oak Farm, just to give you a brief picture of what's going on. So here's kind of a lot of the main crops we grow, and that's just a shot from up in the greenhouse. You can see a lot of onions in there in the spring, and then later on those onions will get transplanted, and then we actually start a whole bunch of winter squash and transplant that. The other thing that happens in the springtime, of course, is lambs, and that's always really cute. Kind of a nice change of pace to the brown little lambs running around. Um, so planting in the springtime, we use just some regular seeders. All our equipment's old. We use just regular seeders and then an old transplanter for setting out most of our transplants in the field. And then one of the main things that we do in the summertime, since we're organic, is cultivating. And so we don't say weeding unless we're like on our knees pulling weeds. We say cultivating because it sounds more refined. So these old tractors get the miles put on them, and we try and get out and cultivate, weather permitting, every 3 or 4 days. And we've got a variety of different sweeps, and you can see on the little orange Alex G has a rolling basket cultivator underneath of it that we use for getting in close by those crops. But keeping weeds under control, that's probably one of our biggest tasks. And in order to facilitate that, we've sort of gone away from shorter beds and intense planting to long straight rows, so we can just set the cultivator down and go. So we also have some hoop houses that we're growing in, and in the summertime, those are for cherry tomatoes and cucumbers primarily. We grow some other stuff in them in the summertime, but mostly cucumbers and tomatoes. And then once we get into fall, we're pulling out a whole lot of crops out of the field. So carrots is one thing. That's probably one of my favorite crops to grow because they taste so good. Those California carrots just can't stand up compared to real close local carrots. So you can see we have invested in a little bit of machinery, and it's old too. There's a carrot harvester over there. I think it's 1950 something carrot harvester, one row carrot harvester, and that's been a great labor saver. A lot of carrots. Around 20,000 pounds of carrots, 25,000 pounds of carrots a year. So then some other big fall crops, cabbage and onions, and I like those big ones because you pull them out of the field, and in a day, and you really have a lot to, you have done a lot. You can really see what you did all summer, and so that's satisfying. There's not too many ways you can get that kind of immediate gratification in the world, but that's one of them. So then winter squash is another big crop for us, and we actually have a room in our garage that is heated and insulated that we store things in. It'll hold 16 bins, 800-pound bins. So one of the things with all that produce that feels pretty good too is to be able to donate a little bit when we have a good year to help other folks out. So 2 years ago we donated a couple bins of carrots and butternut squash to the brick, and we were lined up to do it again this year, but it was pretty wet and yields were less than we wanted to. But in the course of the week in the summertime when we're packing up produce, if we have small quantities of extra things, even just like an extra 100 pounds of broccoli that isn't going to have a home, then we'll drop it off at the brick, and it's nice. They're really appreciative, and they're a great organization. So in the wintertime, it's not too cold to grow produce up here. In the wintertime, once our carrots or tomatoes and cucumbers are out of those hoop houses, we'll seed them down to winter spinach. So from September until April, we've got spinach growing in those hoop houses. And we're actually in year 2 of a SARE grant trial on winter production of spinach and some variety trials. So heat and light trials, which is pretty interesting. Just dropped off a bushel of spinach yesterday, I think it was, at the food co-op. And so yeah, it's possible to have local spinach, local greens, with a little bit of extra coordination. So that's in conjunction with the school high tunnels at the Washburn and Drummond School, and then taught at River Road Farm. So then our claim to fame, I guess, is this summer the Wisconsin Public Television came up and included us on a show. So I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but if you look back on there, it's called Around the Farm Table, and it's a pretty neat show. I think they did a good job of condensing and showcasing really all the pretty interesting stuff that happens up here in the local foods arena. We're a pretty special place, and I think a lot of times when I go other places, you know, you think, man, who's heard of Ashland, Wisconsin, right? But man, I'm telling you, people, growers from around the Midwest and around the nation have heard about Ashland, Wisconsin. So it's pretty cool. So then my final slide on Great Oak Farm is just kind of a breakdown of what our sales look like. And when we started off, it was definitely more weighted toward retail sales. But now we've been increasing our wholesale sales, and so you can see it's about 60-40. And most of our retail sales are going out in Bayfield Foods, Lake Superior CSA, and then a little bit direct off the farm. And then about 40% of our sales are wholesale, and it's actually split pretty evenly between those three bullet points. About a third is Spirit Creek Farm, about a third goes to the Schwamgen Food Co-op in Ashland, and then about a third goes to the Bayfield Foods wholesale program in Northern College. A little bit more than a third to that group. And so I'm going to hand it over to Todd. He's going to tell you a little bit about River Road Farm, and then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the Bayfield Food Producers Cooperative and the Lake Superior CSA, and then after that, Todd's going to talk about the Ewing's Rice Food Center. So.
Hello, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. It's an honor to be invited to give this presentation. Wonderful to have come so far in a short period of time. So my name is Todd Rolfe. I own River Road Farm in Moringa, Wisconsin, along with my wife Kelsey and our 4 beautiful children. A little bit of background about myself. Like Chris had mentioned, this love of farming is a sickness maybe, or you're born with it, but I was the dairy farm hand in my neighborhood. I got on my bike at the age of 12 and rode down to the hay field down the road where the farmer was making hay, and I said, I want to be a farmer. And he laughed at me and said, throw your bike in the back of the truck, let's go. And so that began the whole thing. I milked cows all the way till I graduated high school. Loved it, but I did go to college. But then shortly thereafter, I was inspired by a local farmer outside of Stevens Point who gave a presentation on this community-supported agriculture model of vegetable farming and was somewhat proving the viability of it as a profession. And that was it for me. I'm like, heck with my natural resources degree, I'm going to go be a farmer. So we subsequently moved up here. My girlfriend and I at the time moved to Ashland, Wisconsin. We came up here on a camping trip, and I fell in love with this area. It was so beautiful and had everything anybody would ever want, right? So we started a little farm at a 10-member CSA and joined the Ashland's Farmers Market. Back then it was at the Coast to Coast Hardware. Anybody remember that way back in the day? And then we helped the planning process to get it moved to Chapel Avenue. But then in my more adult life, I guess you would say, when I was running a construction company, I went back to Northland, got my business degree in leadership and management, and then right around the same time took the Lake Superior Farm Beginnings course in order to gain the tools necessary to write a business plan for this new farm I wanted to start. Graduated from there in 2011. We established the farm at a different property before we actually own the land where we're at now. And we based the whole thing off of our business plan. We had recognized the fact that our major limitation in northern Wisconsin is our short growing season, right? So what could I do to tackle those shoulder seasons and cheat our climate? Well, that was utilizing these new greenhouse structures called high tunnels. So In the meantime, we did find a farm, luckily, right on the Marengo River. We opened up a quarter-acre chunk of land, put our new high tunnel on there, and then we were just off and running. We leaps and bounds each year, doubled production. In our second year, we bought a second high tunnel, 30 by 50. And last year, I just bought another 30 by 96 movable greenhouse. So here are some of the crops that we grow on our farm. So with the greenhouses, again, we really are focusing on that off-season period, spring and fall, pushing the limits on winter. But then, of course, they're really conducive to high-quality summer crops listed there. And then we do specialize in garlic. We grow anywhere between 7,000 and 9,000 garlic every season, mainly to supply the Lake Superior CSA. And then doing our best to try to establish small fruits, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, but they're incredibly challenging. We do have animals, but mostly for fun. I have children to feed, and we like to eat pork and poultry, chickens. And they're great. We do pasture the pigs, so we'll plant crops intentionally to have them graze through it, right, and increase fertility on the land. And same with the chickens, as you can see in that, that's a crop of buckwheat that the chickens are being grazed through, meat birds, and we do have some layers as well. So this is something new that we started last season, kind of on the agritourism model, and we felt it was important to give families the opportunity to let expose their kids to places like Chris had mentioned in his childhood, where they can be as loud as they want, they can get as dirty as they want, and they can follow their inspiration, right, and not get yelled at for it. Because, when you go to school, you got to stay in line, keep your mouth shut. So we want to give them the opportunity, and at the same time, we're teaching these kids about a relationship with the land that used to be the status quo 100 years ago for most families, right? Your relationship with the land. So something that's unique to our farm is that we utilize what's called intensive planting or biointensive agriculture. This diagram shows kind of the strategy behind that. We grow on 4-foot wide raised beds. They're raised up relatively 6 to 8 inches. And what that does is allow us to grow our crops much closer together, because we're not compacting in between all the crop spaces, right? So the soil stays looser and allows the plant to get the moisture and nutrients that it needs at the time. And what that results in is that we're actually measuring our dollars per square foot, or even in some cases our dollars per square inch, as opposed to modern agriculture that predominantly measures it by dollars per acre. And so there's another number of strategies, but the hexagonal spacing, or in any case, the closer you put the plants together, it also fends off weeds as well. So this is what it looks like. This picture was taken in November, mid-November, and that's my son Gabe helping me weed and harvest. So our fertility really is rooted in building the soil. So we're not feeding the plants, we're feeding the soil. We're trying to build the microbiological activity in the soil, and what those critters are doing are making the nutrients available to the plants. And at the same time, we're reducing erosion and creating biodiversity within our soils. And this is some of the principles of that. Composting is key. We use what are called green manures. We're actually intentionally growing a crop of grains and legumes only to plow it right back into the soil, which seems ridiculous, but that again feeds these microbes and earthworms, right? And they're going to turn around and release nutrients for the plants in future years. So high tunnels being a key piece to our production model. It's a term that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, so I always try to add this slide. We all think of it as greenhouses, but greenhouses traditionally are permanent structures that are built over benches, concrete to grow potted plants or container plants, right? And then there's hoop houses, which in this burgeoning organic farming movement, were a low-tech way to create a microclimate. So you could go buy a PVC from the hardware store and bend them in an arch and throw some plastic over and create that effect. Well, the greenhouse companies caught wind of that and they're like, we're going to make some money by making more sturdy structures that, again, you erect right over the ground. So the same ground that you would grow in out in our field, you just place a greenhouse right over the top of it and create a microclimate. And what that does then is not only season extension, but allows us to create higher quality produce because there's greater protection from pests and diseases both. So season extension is incredible. So that thermometer, I hope you all can read it. So it says it's 52 degrees inside while it's 26 degrees outside. Okay, and that picture was taken in right before Christmas. So, and then the larger picture, you can see the snow stacked up, you know, over 4 feet up to the board, what we call the hip board on the tunnel itself. And we're just getting ready to plant. That's probably beginning of March there. So these are some of the tools that we use. You know, again, we're small peanuts. But we're moving more and more towards mechanization. We use a lot of straw mulch. I just took an old bedding chopper in a dairy barn and put it on a wagon and use it to mulch my garlic and strawberries and tomato plants. But we do grow a lot of greens. In the bottom right-hand corner there is a greens harvester. You can take a cordless drill and hook it up to it. And it's got a little oscillating blade on it, and it just fills the basket with the greens. So what used to take us 3 hours to harvest, we can do in about 40 minutes. Again, just super low tech, fairly affordable, high efficiencies are key to our operations. So again, built in our business plan was the idea of specialty crops, utilizing these high tunnels, trying to identify what could be a niche in the market, right, to set ourselves apart from our competition. And definitely a focus on quality, presentation in the retail market, right, and then always trying to build consumer confidence. So one of those are our greenhouse-grown tomatoes. Beefsteak slicers are the standard for us. We'll harvest on average once the season really kicks in and they're starting to ripen. Beginning of August, about on average 150 pounds a day per tunnel. And that's on a 30 foot by 48 foot tunnel. So it's incredible. You know, like last year, any of you that garden, there weren't a lot of ripe tomatoes at the end of the year, were there, right? But with these structures, you're almost guaranteed. So. And again, the flavor is incredible, yield, and then the dollars per square foot, which I'll talk about in a little bit. This is new last year. We've been selling greens to the Schwamigan Food Co-op in particular for a number of years, but usually in Ziploc bags. But going to the clamshell style, not only did that give us the presentation on the shelf, but also shelf life. The thing with greens is they're highly perishable, they damage easily. Clamshells protect those greens. They'll be good for 2 weeks easy, right? So we're really happy about that and really looking into expanding that offering in the market in particular. And something that we really try to do is the diversity of the mix. Like some of the mixes you get from California, they have 5 different kinds to choose from. We're trying to pack flavor, a wide variety of flavor into our mix again. So that's just gives you the pop you need without having to buy 2 or 3 different ones and combine them. And then some other specialty crops that we grow. We, again, just trying to think outside the box here a little bit. The garlic, those potatoes in particular are super fun. All reds. I mean, you can have like bright red mashed potatoes. It's a blast. Kids love them. So, just to point out the reality of our situation, so we started out super small, going to farmer's market, barely making it by, but 3 years later, we're off and running, positioning ourselves to continually scale up our operation, buy new equipment, increase efficiencies, increase, our revenue in the next year to set new goals. Towards the bottom there, that goes back again to this, we're measuring it based on by the square foot. So like when I buy a new high tunnel greenhouse, I'm expecting at least $7,500 at the minimum per crop, per tunnel. And I'll grow 3 crops in a season in each tunnel. And if at the end of the year, and I go through my records, I'm not achieving that, then I need to go back and refine those crops that I'm choosing, because you got to make that tunnel pay for itself, right? It's an investment. So, and then similarly in the field. Some of the financing options, one of my favorites is the Schwambigen Food Co-op a number of years ago started the Chip for Change program. So if any of you have shopped at the food co-op, they always ask you to round up your balance, right? Well, what that does is goes into a big pot of money that people like myself and Chris and other farmers in our region can take out no interest loans. And on top of that, we get to determine what payback terms work best for us. Now, what bank can you go to get those kind of terms? It's incredible. So if it wasn't for that, we really would not have been able to scale up the farm at the rate we have. Now, we have, of course, gone to Farm Service Agency. We've done direct loans for the new 30 by 96 greenhouse, but also operating loans. At the beginning of every season, farmers roll the dice, right? We don't have large pots of money sitting in the bank from the year before necessarily. So a lot of times, in my case, I have to take out a small loan to buy the seeds, to buy the soil mix, the potting mix to start plants, maybe some new equipment, whatever it is, and then hope that this year's crop is going to come in and pay for that, right? And we do that every year, over and over again. So, but we love what we do, and we keep doing it. And it's when you're feeding people and delivering these CSA boxes, and people are overjoyed when they open up that box and see this bounty of food each week. That's the reward that we need to keep doing what we do. So. Some of the markets then, River Road Farm, of course, Schwambigen Food Co-op, North of College, and then the CSA really is our bread and butter. We make the lion's share of our money through that. And then a large amount of expansion in the wholesale realm in the restaurant area. And so we have a number of them on Madeline Island, and then right in Ashland, Washburn, and Bayfield. So. And this is where I'll turn it over to Chris to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so we've talked about it a couple times, Bayfield Foods Cooperative, Bayfield Regional Food Producers Cooperative. And so I'm going to just kind of go over what that cooperative is about and how it works. So it started a while ago from about 20 different local farms, and all the farms that are involved are located in Ashland and Bayfield counties, which is pretty cool. A wide variety of producer members. Everybody from folks that you have for sure heard of, like Hauser's, or maybe Hidden View Farm down in Marengo, grass-fed beef operation, multi-generational operations, to kind of some newer places. Fred and Kelly Fay and their Happy Hollow cheese, Lucky You and Happy Hollow cheese, from up in the peninsula bought their family farm back and turned it into milking and making cheese there. To folks like Rob Hartman at Twisting Twig Gardens, who I don't even know if he has an acre in production, but he does a great job, and it's cool to have him be able to be the cooperative and help find a market for his stuff too. So yeah, running the gamut of producers. So founded in the fall of 2009, and our main goals were to kind of like, how do we not compete against one another? How do we work together and get food out of the region? Because it's a great place to live up here, but really, there's more trees and woods and lakes and everything than there is people to buy your stuff. So how do we get out where the people are? And how do we make that work by sort of sharing infrastructure, that sort of thing. And so we started with a building that we rented, the old machine shed, out at the old ag site, now the Bayfield County Business Park that Scotty mentioned. And yeah, then a couple of years ago, we purchased 4 buildings and 5 acres of land. Our cooperative purchased that with an eye towards expansion. And one of the buildings out there is a big pole barn, and we've been working. It's kind of a winter project, and we've got less going on. We all come in, and whoever's available can come in and get some stuff done. So we've been working on putting up ceilings and working on some coolers, some freezers, and some real capacity so that we can really move some product. And we've been able to do it because farmers are an interesting lot. I mean, we got everybody from electricians, carpenters, plumbers, I mean, mechanics, welders, people who know concrete, people who market, people who have equipment, you name it. There's a farmer that probably does it. So that's the nice thing about working as a group. We've got a big group of people and a lot of skills to pool. The other thing that's great is since we're working together, each of us doesn't need to own a refrigerated truck to get our stuff around. So we've got one refrigerated trailer, and then this last year, or refrigerated van, I'm sorry, and then this last year we picked up a refrigerated trailer as well, so that we can make one trip and drop off everybody's stuff, and that's been working great. And it won't be too long before we have to move to a refrigerated truck, I think, because that van and trailer are getting pretty packed when we're moving a lot of stuff. But that's what you want to see. That's part of the deal. Just sort of nuts and bolts, sales and structure. When we first started, we barely broke 10 grand in 2009, and the last 2 years, the Bayfield Foods Cooperative has sold over $500,000 a year of all food that's produced right here in Ashland, Bayfield County. That's pretty impressive, I think, when you put your head around it. So how we sell that as the cooperative is kind of 3 main legs of the cooperative. First is the wholesale program, and next is that Lake Superior CSA that you've heard us talk about a little bit. And then last is a new program that we're starting to roll out this year called Ship Direct, and Sadie's here, she's our Ship Direct manager, getting that program lined up, and it's basically, you've probably heard of the like meal in a box kind of stuff, Blue Apron, Hello Fresh, or whatever they are, and we're like, dang, we got producers up here that raise some of the best, I mean, meat, fish, produce, fruit, value-added stuff around. I mean, that's like, you got everything that you need to make a good dinner right there. So how do we roll out something like that made with local stuff? So that's pretty exciting. So hopefully by the end of this year we'll be kind of making some headway there. So structure-wise, this is the co-op's overseen by a board of directors of 5 of us, and then each of these different programs is run by committee. So you've heard the saying about the platypus looks like it was built by committee, and it's all, you know, everything put together from a different angle. And we're trying to make that less of a problem with our cooperative, but that kind of thing can happen sometimes. But anyway, we've got 2 paid delivery drivers, and each program has a paid manager. So our main way of sales is online, and so bayfieldfoods.org, and you can sign up there for retail or wholesale sales. So just to give you a roundabout, first off for the wholesale program, biggest purchaser on the wholesale program, right here at Northland College. So our cooperative sold over $60,000 worth of locally grown and produced stuff to Northland College. So I mean, a big hats off to Northland for walking the talk. Then if you take Northland out of the picture, those are kind of the other how the sales break down. So it's pretty well weighted, you know, really between retail, restaurants, and schools when you put Northland in the picture, about a third apiece. And so some of our biggest wholesale buyers are also right here in the region. Free Hands Farm, right here in Ashland, the Deepwater Grill, right here in Ashland. Whole Foods Co-op in Duluth, and then the Duluth Grill over also in Duluth. So the wholesale program, we've got a local route that makes the round to Nishwamingan Bay, and then over to Duluth once a week. And then we also have a monthly route that goes on Highway 53 and 51, and also sort of an as available, when they have a big enough order, we can take an order up to Grand Marais or over to Marquette. And again, the only reason this works is because all of us are pooling our stuff to put on that van and make the trip. Because it wouldn't work for me to drive all the way to Marquette or Grand Marais for a couple of cases of squash, or a couple of cases of cabbage or something like that. But if I have a couple of cases and each person has a few cases, then that fills up the van and makes it work. So the second main leg of the Bayfield Foods Cooperative is Lake Superior CSA. And some of you are familiar with CSA. Some people are probably like, what in the world are they talking about CSA? So it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. That's what CSA is. And basically, so you think of it as in a customer relationship where a customer signs up with a group of farmers or farm for a portion of what that farm grows ahead of the season, right? So Todd had talked about working capital in the beginning of the year. And it gets to be pretty lean come March because it's been a while since we've had a lot of stuff getting sold. And it sure is nice to know when May comes around that your stuff is sold, basically, already. Now you got to come through on your end and produce it. And again, people can order meat, fruit, vegetables, flowers, bakery, a whole host of value-added stuff from jams and jellies to syrup and honey. And there's a bunch of different options that people have, and we found that giving people options has been pretty important. So folks can order just a one-time special order, or you can sign on for almost the whole year and get a box every week all summer long, and 6 boxes in the winter. So you can see where we're delivering kind of locally and regionally. And Ironwood's going to be a new addition for this coming year. So what is CSA? CSA is fresh. It doesn't get any fresher. We pick this stuff on Monday and Tuesday, and then we come together and aggregate it, put it in the boxes, and then van's loaded. We aggregate Wednesday morning, van gets loaded by noon, and then it's out the door and in people's hands by 6. So that is, it's a pretty cool, it's very different from the sort of conventional industrial model of produce distribution. So then I'm just going to finish up with just a few sample slides of so a lot of people ask, what does a CSA box look like? And really, it just depends is the best answer, what's in season. But so a mini box might have, mini vegetable box have maybe 4 items in it with a couple of, you can add on plus items like pancake mix and maple syrup and honey. And there's a typical, kind of summertime vegetable box. Regular vegetable box would have, 10 or 12 different things in it. That's the box that went out vegetables last week, two weeks ago, the first Wednesday of the month in February. And then samples of meats that can go out in a meats box, and then fruits. And it just depends, again, what's in season. So Flowers is a new addition for us, and it's been really well received. Melissa Fishbach at Wall Hollow Farms does a fantastic job, and her flowers are also at the Food Co-op in Ashland. So it's a great way to brighten up your table. Okay, Todd, tell us about Northland.
Okay, so about this exciting new project here at the college, the Hewley's Rice Food Center. So a little background on that. The college had a long history of purchasing local food products over the years, but there were a number of hurdles involved with that, with consistency from farmers, different food service directors, and the sort. So there were plans and process about how do we kind of get over some of these hurdles, right? And I do have to say, since we just got off the subject with Bayfield Foods, something that they provide is consistency that is similar to your food distributors like U.S. Foods, Cisco, and the like, right? And so that was a key piece as well. But really what it boils down to is that the Northern College signed what's called the Lake Superior Compact, which was a sustainability pledge across business entities and institutions in northwestern Wisconsin and the arrowhead of Minnesota. Well, Northern College decided that they're going to pledge to have 80% local food purchased for their food service and cafeteria. Crazy, right? So then it was like, how do we do that? Our growing season's like 3 months long. Are you nuts, you know? So how do we do that? Well, we have a kitchen, a standalone kitchen that's dedicated specifically to preserving food. So just like back in the old days when people needed to put up food for winter, we are bringing in these products and we're canning them and dehydrating them and freezing them, right? But what that also does is provide this space for educating burgeoning entrepreneurs, you know, inspiring students to be food producers, right? And then also provide a service to farmers in the region who don't have the resources or capabilities to preserve a product and value add it to make it shelf ready for a retail market. So, the other half of the building, however, is a compost center, which is a long time program of the college, started by students, still run by students. So since 1993, the students have been collecting all of the food waste from the dorms, from the cafeteria. At this point, we also have buckets distributed within the staff and faculty offices. Really building upon that. But also, the new center has a larger composting vessel. So we have 60% more capacity with this new machine, which allows us then to eliminate waste streams throughout the community. So now we are collecting compost or food scraps from the Schwambigan Food Co-op, Ashland School District, district-wide. We have Bodine's Fisheries is also bringing their fish waste down to us. So what that allows for us is to create partnerships, help them eliminate their waste costs, and we get to create this beautiful black gold in the process. And create the closed loop system then, right? So we're removing the fertility from the farmer's field when we purchase and eat their food. We get to take the waste from that, the scraps, compost it, return it back to the land. So then we beg the question, you know, what is the role in the big picture with the food center? Now there's these harsh realities, right? So the college wants to achieve 80% local food, but we're losing farmers, right? That's been the trend. They're baby boomer generation, they're retiring, there's more consolidation of farming, you know, in more of a corporate model, so more animals, less owners. And then there's also the hurdles for beginning farmers, which are, access to land, access to financing. So if you have a 20 or even 30-year-old person who even has a business plan, but wants to go to the bank and say, hey, I want to be a farmer, I think you'd get laughed out the door. They're not going to let you just buy a bare chunk of land, build a house, build a barn, all off of a farm business plan. So, and hopefully we'll work on that. And then there's the debt load piece, which usually results in somebody's got to work off the farm, right? And that's a huge struggle for most folks. And in some cases, I spent years, and still do actually, where both my wife and I work off the farm. So try and manage 6 acres of vegetables and raise kids and work jobs to pay your bills. So, this is my solution around that, which is being business-minded farmers, right? Entrepreneurs. So, basing the whole thing on that education first, if possible. So something at the college right now we're working on is developing a major and minor curriculum around sustainable food systems. And what that does then is hopefully turn out farming professionals, right? We all can, for the most part, work really hard, but who likes to keep records? Records are critical to any successful business venture, right? You have to track your numbers, you have to identify where you're losing and where you're gaining. And that's the key piece to the whole thing, to sustainability, truly. Now, this is something that's interesting that came out just this year. A new trend, right? We have college-educated young folks who are leaving their 6-figure jobs to go be farmers. They're nuts, But there's a need there, and they have the tools that are necessary to be successful at it, I hope. So another thing that the Food Center can do is to help promote sustainable agriculture, right? And what I mean by that is looking at products rather than for their shippability or shelf life, but rather for quality and flavor, right? There's also the local branding piece that goes into that. For years it was organic, really set products aside from convention. Well, in the last 4 to 6 years, it's been quote-unquote local, right? And I think people really value that, and it's come out of 2 studies out of the Center for Rural Communities here at Northland College that are proving just that consumers truly value products that are coming right out the back door, right in their backyard, right? So if we can help, again, burgeoning entrepreneurs focus on that and identify what these products can be, that helps build our local economy. And then on top of that, there's other kind of branding ideas, which would be the environmental stewardship part, which would, organic fits into that, but also new things like nutrient density. So in our food nowadays, because it's bred to be shipped and stored on shelves, doesn't mean it has all the vitamins and minerals in it that it used to, right? So we take a lot of multivitamins. Well, now if you grow food on really healthy living soils, they have all those nutrients in them already. So that's something the medical field has been identifying in the last few years. And then there's also the beneficial fats piece, which farmers like Hidden View Farm that raises grass-fed beef, they had their meat tested for the omega-3 fatty acid content, and it was equivalent to that of salmon. And this is beef. So those again, those are branding. Those are, you have an edge on the market if you're going to market yourself as such. So, but really the end goal is we want to increase product availability across a region, and maybe even someday be distributing out of our region, right? We can expand that radius. But so more local food choices, and we really need the next generation of processors and developers. I think right now all the romance is in we all want to be farmers because it's a great way of life. But we need people who are going to create value-added food products. Most notably butchers. So if there anybody in here who's passionate about processing poultry and beef, and we need you. So then the Larson Food Lab at the Healing's Race Food Center also has a shared use kitchen capability. And what I mean by that is that it can serve as a hacker space, as they're being called, for entrepreneurs who are just trying to figure out product development. They have an idea, but they're not sure about the recipe or what it's going to get packaged in or how it's going to get preserved and shipped. They can come in and rent our space by the hour, by the day, by the week. And then in the meantime, folks like myself and Craig Showalter and economic development corporations can help these people develop their business plan and work out their numbers, right, while they're doing the product development piece at relatively low cost with access to really expensive equipment, right? So then hopefully when they've got everything dialed in and their business plan done, they're ready to go get financing and launch this new idea. And then there's the food processing services again to farmers. That's just, we have vacuum packing capabilities and soon we'll have labeling capabilities. So hopefully then we can help our producer base turn out more product as well. And then of course there's educating consumers. This is a real challenge. I think this is the biggest uphill hurdle. Trends are one thing, but it's really hard to convince people why pay more, right? I mean, you can go to the store and get chicken for $1.50 a pound or something ridiculous in some cases. But really, you're helping yourselves by doing so, keeping the dollars circulating locally. I'm raising children that are going to our local school districts, right? I'm within the tax base. We all do better when we do better, sort of theme. But then there's also personal health and performance that's based on what you eat. But also the family dining piece is something interesting to me that I've been reading about. So I gave a talk not so long ago at WITC to high school seniors and college freshman age folks, right? And I asked how many of you in growing up ate a meal together as a family that your parents or somebody cooked from scratch. So out of a class of 26 kids, 3 raised their hands. So then when we talk about the disconnect with the food that we eat, it's a multi-generational issue, right? And so that again, for farmers like Chris and I, that's a huge hurdle for us. We're part of that uphill battle. So really want to help cultivate food relationships. But here's the positive stuff. So we already have over 40 farms already in Ashland and Bayfield counties, right, selling their products right here, okay, that we can support. But can we create more local products? Well, with the food center, we can. With that kitchen, we all of a sudden have been given the tools to really diversify the product offerings locally. But then are there more possibilities? I think in coming years, we're going to figure that out, right? And then what are the limitations? And it's my hope that folks like myself and Scotty and Betsy and others, that we can all work together to figure out what are those limitations and how do we conquer those, right? To build this local food economy and grow towards what I would call the community-based food system. And this is kind of a cool chart that kind of puts that together for us. So hopefully that's where we get. So thank you, everybody. That's the end of our presentation.